So this is the what I want to focus on today, which is what research can we do in this area, right? Because we're all PhD students here. And so actually, I have been in this area of RPA since I entered this PhD program, which was in 2017. So it's been 4 years now. So I have a lot to talk about, like in the what research can we do in this domain. So I basically classify the RPA research into 2 streams based on the research methods. So the first stream is what people usually call positive research. It doesn't mean that the research is positive. It just means that this type of research, they look at what has happened in the past. So this type of research is a very common research stream in traditional accounting research, for example, the archival type of research or experimental. So the feature of this kind of research is that you want to explain a phenomenon, right? For example, you want to ask why some accountants don't like RPA, or why some firms start to adopt RPA. What are the driving factors? So if you want to explain something, then that falls into this positive research or archival type of research. And this type of research usually starts from theories, right? Like if you have a theory about why certain companies are willing to adopt technologies, then you use that theory as your backbone, and then you develop hypotheses, and then you collect data, and then finally you perform your statistical analysis to test whether the hypothesis holds. So these are what I classify as the positive research. And the examples are like archival, experimental, or observations. And later I will give you examples on each of these research methods. And the second stream of RPA research is what people call normative research. So this type of research, instead of asking what has happened in the past, it asks, what should we do to make the world better? So instead of explaining the history, normative research tries to come up with a solution or prescribe what we should do in accounting practice or auditing practice. So in terms of RPA, one example of this normative research is, okay, RPA is good, but how can auditors use RPA in auditing practice? And you can say, I can provide a guidance to auditors. Then this is called normative research. One main part of this normative research is called design science research. So basically the design science research is saying that we produce or we create an artifact which can help with this, which can solve the problem, which is the solution to the problem. And then you need to scientifically evaluate the effectiveness of the artifact that you build. And later I will also give you examples on the design science research. So I hope this is clear, that this slide is clear to you, that basically we have these research streams. Actually, this is not only true for RPA, it's true for each topic in social science research. Like you have this kind of backward-looking research versus this future forward-looking or creative type of research.
Abby, can I add something here?
And there are some mix and match. So you can use this positive research and combined with normative research. So it depends on your research question. So here are some examples of the positive research on RPA. The first one is Cooper et al. They did, their research question is, they want to see how RPA has been used in public accounting firms, especially the Big Four. So in this research question, like this belongs to the positive research because they are trying to identify what has happened, right? How RPA has been used in this area. So to answer this research question, they basically interview the RPA leaders at Big Four firms and find out all the things that are highlighted in purple. So I won't go to the details, but the basic idea is that like they found that compared to other services provided by the public accounting firms, audit service or assurance service is lagging behind in terms of RPA adoption. So a potential reason is that from this paper is that the assurance industry is heavily regulated by PCAOB and other regulations. So auditors are more conservative in terms of adopting these emerging technologies. In contrast, in other services provided by the accounting firms, for example, tax service or consulting service, this area are not heavily regulated compared to the assurance industry, and they have more IT talents, so they are more like the adoption rate of RPA is higher than in the assurance industry. So this is what they find in general. So this is just to show you that this is one example of like this positive research where you look at what has happened, right? You want to describe a picture of how RPA is used in this domain. And this paper is published in Accounting Horizons, which is also a very good journal. Now the second example is by Kokina and Blanchett in 2019. So in this paper, they want to look at what skills should accountants have in terms of adopting RPA. So similarly, they conducted an interview to identify the research question that they are asking. So this is also backward looking to describe the big picture, right? So they also conducted interview. And this is one example of case study plus interview. It's also by Kokina, and this paper is also in Accounting Horizons. So this is studying very similar research question, but they combined case study with interview to look at what roles are accountants playing in accounting practices if there is RPA. So they found that accountants are more like identifiers, explainers, trainers, and other roles if they have automation technology assisting them to do certain tasks. That means accountants are not being simply automated away, but they are still playing very important roles in accounting tasks. So this is also one example of this backward-looking, big picture type of study. And I have two more examples which are not directly related to RPA, but technology in general. So sometimes we also conduct experimental studies to look at the impact of technology on some things that you are interested. For example, this study also published on Accounting Horizons. The authors look at what are the impacts of intelligent agents. We can just think of it as automation. What are the impacts of automation on managers' judgment and decision making? So to look at this research question, like you can set up experiments to test your theories or hypotheses. So this is also one method. And you can also do archival research. So this example is from my colleague and I. We are having this working paper on looking at the impacts of AI on firms, one of firms' accounting outcome, which is the information quality. So in this paper, we hand collect data on like which firms are using or claiming that they are using artificial intelligence, and then look at whether that will improve their internal information quality. So this is also try to explain the phenomenon or try to look at what has happened. So this is also belongs to the positive research stream. So these are basically the examples I gave to the first type of research. And then the second stream is the normative research, which is actually the what our CARLab. So for those of you who don't know about CARLab, it's short for Continuous Auditing and Reporting Lab. So this is in the AIS department. So our department basically focuses on the design science type of research when it comes to RPA, which is to say we look at we prescribe solutions to the problems that the practitioners are having. So this diagram basically summarizes all the efforts that we put in RPA in this area. So when I first joined the PhD program in 2017, that was kind of the start of this RPA auditing area. At that time, because RPA was such a new thing that we don't know whether this is something for accounting or auditing. So we started by asking the question of whether it's feasible for auditors to adopt RPA. So at that time, the work that we did was mostly conceptual, which means we have opinion papers on what are the potential impacts of RPA on auditing and how can auditors adopt RPA in their practice. So you see a lot of papers on creating framework. So a framework is basically an organized structure which you can follow to implement certain things. For example, in my colleague's paper, actually that paper was the first paper talking about RPA in auditing, and now it got cited more than 100 times. So in that paper, basically my colleague proposes a framework like step by step of how auditors should consider should follow if they want to implement RPA in auditing. In the next year, Freddie Huang, he also proposed a similar framework, but he applies the framework to a confirmation process, which belongs to the substantive testing phase. And he basically demonstrated, yes, it works because it works on this case, the confirmation process. And also my colleague, Andrea Rosario, she also, we work together on applying RPA to substantive testing on loan data. So that ended up in her dissertation. So those are the early endeavors of our exploration on RPA in auditing. So as you can see, these research projects that we worked on are not backward looking, right? We're not looking at what has happened or why this happened. We are basically asking what should we do, right? What auditors should do if they want to adopt RPA in their practice. And then moving on to recent years, so we had this project where we apply RPA in the audit planning of a CPA firm. In that project, we gradually realized that RPA is not a silver bullet that can solve every problem. It has its disadvantages, which is RPA can only be used for very structured tasks, right? So that means auditors or accountants, they still need to play a huge role in terms of providing their professional judgment. So I remember funding asked the question about who give the level of risk, right? So that part is really judgmental, and currently it cannot be automated. So in that case, the auditors should come up with a risk level themselves based on their experience, right? Or assisted by some cognitive technologies, and then give that risk level to RPA, which can continue working on based on that risk level. So based on that idea, we propose this idea of attended RPA, which means human-robot collaboration. So that's how that idea went off, and now this paper is under, I would say, revision for a journal. And more recently, we realized that, okay, actually, yes, RPA is feasible in auditing. However, we have this challenge of how to actually implement RPA at scale in accounting firms, because it's not a major challenge when you configure the bots. So for those of you who have configured bots like Lanxing and Fangbin, you must know that actually configuring a bot doesn't require that much effort. But for companies to actually use the bot, that's where the challenge comes in. So then from there on, we are looking at what are the challenges, what are the risks, and how can we solve those problems. So these are the more recent research projects. So, but one common thing about all these research projects in our AIS department is that we try to come up with a solution to help the practitioners. So that's called design science research. Let me see if I'm running out of time. Yeah, I'll make it quick. So here, this is the RPA plus human that we have been working on. So the basic idea, so I put the abstract here. I know this is a little bit sloppy, but basically we say that we propose this framework, which is the solution, and then we validate the effectiveness of this solution by demonstrating that, okay, it can work in this type of audit. And we also are going to provide more scientific evaluations in the revision part. But the basic idea is that whenever you do design science research, you always need to show that, okay, this is the solution, and these are the validation work that I performed to show that the solution work. So this is basically the design science research style. And this is true for other papers. So this is another example where I discuss, yes, RPA is good. However, it should be combined with AI. So that also goes back to Min Yoon's question about whether AI and RPA are the same. So I said it depends, because so in this paper, I basically say that they are different. Because here I adopt the definition of AI as the technology that can make human-like judgments. For example, dogs are intelligent because they can adapt to the new situations, right? Like today, you show them that this is your toy, right? And tomorrow they can pick up anything and say, yeah, this is my toy too. So they can adapt to the new situations. But RPA is so rule-based that if anything changes, it does not work. So based on this, I say that RPA and AI are different, and they should be like complemented, should be complementary to each other. So RPA has this feature of following rules and can deal with all these repetitive tasks. But AI has this feature where it can adapt to new situations, make decisions. So why don't we combine them, right? So this is that paper is about. And so basically that paper, in that paper, I proposed this framework or guidance of, okay, if auditors want to do that, like how can you actually combine RPA with AI? And I also demonstrate that idea using a very simple synthetic case. And another idea mentioned in that paper is this auditor in the loop ecosystem. So this is basically saying that like in the future, auditors, RPA, AI, and other technologies, they form this kind of ecosystem where the technologies do what they are good at, and humans will have more time for their challenging tasks. So it's a simple but neat idea that can really ring the bell to practitioners. So this is also a type of design science research. And this paper is Freddie and Professor Miklos, their also design science piece on a RPA guidance for auditors. And they also demonstrated this framework by applying the framework to the confirmation process. So for those of you who don't know about confirmation process, it's basically a process where you get data from the audit clients, your clients, and then you need to go to a third party, for example, a bank, asking for the client's information and see whether what your clients tell you matches with what a third party tells you, right? So you want to make sure that everything matches. And here are some future research topics in this area. So the first one is about the task structure. So this is more towards the AIS students. So the challenge is that nowadays we know that yes, RPA is feasible in accounting tasks, in auditing tasks, but we don't know for sure what's the percentage of tasks that fall into the category of RPA-able. So the only research available now is this very old research 2 decades ago. And this research was conducted by interviewing different accounting firms and summarize all the tasks they do, auditors do, and then say, oh, these are the tasks that are very structured and can be automated. However, things have changed so much over the two decades. So some new research can be done in this area. And this can contribute to the AIS and judgment decision-making research, because once we know what tasks can be automated, AIS people can design tools for those tasks, and judgment decision-making researchers can look at, okay, what are the technology's impacts on auditors' judgment? And I have several suggestions on how can this be done, but I won't go through that. Another thing, let me see. Yeah, so these the other research questions are more like explanatory or positive type of research, which looks at what has happened. For example, it's been more than 5 years since RPA has been in this market. So now maybe we can collect enough data to look at what are the driving factors for RPA adoption and what factors lead to successful RPA implementations. Because according to a survey, about 30 to 50% of RPA adoptions fail eventually. But so maybe people can look at what are the factors that lead to successful implementation and what lead to failures, right? So that can provide practitioners some insights about, okay, this is what we need to do to prevent having a failure RPA. And also, for this positive research stream, we can look at the impacts of RPA. For example, if some companies adopt RPA in their accounting functions, whether that will improve the accounting qualities, right? Whether accuracy will be actually improved, efficiency can be improved, or if auditors use RPA, will that improve the audit quality? And more interestingly, because if you are using RPA, a lot of your hours are shortened, right? For example, in the past, Dongil used 1 hour to clean up the files, but now you can use RPA, which can use 5 minutes to do the same task. And auditors are billed by hours. So if more RPA is used in audit firms, will audit fees decrease, right? So that's also an empirical question to ask. It may not decrease because audit firms can say that we are providing you with higher quality audits, so you have to pay the premium for the higher quality. So we don't know what's the impact of these technologies on audit fees. And of course, as I mentioned, when auditors are assisted by those technologies, how will their judgment and decision-making process be affected? affected. Whether that will help or impair, we also don't know. So for firms that adopt RPA or AI, whether the investors will have a better opinion on them, because now we know that RPA is like blockchain, is like AI. It's such a hot term that so many firms want to say, hey, we are using RPA. It just makes them feel good, right? It's like increasing their reputation. So whether if a firm claims that they are using RPA, whether the investors actually take that into consideration when they value the company. So these are very like what I call impact studies. Like you look at this impact on something. So these are not design science research. These are like the forward look. You look at the history, right, and look at what has happened. And also you can conduct interviews, case studies, observations on what are the challenges of RPA adoption, and when it comes to evaluating RPA's performance or RPA success, what metrics should you use? Should you use in return on investment? Should you use qualitative measures such as improvements of your satisfaction towards work, or your quality of like standardization of your working papers? So that's also something needs to be investigated. And others are like, okay, with RPA, how that will change the accounting or auditing practice. Like Professor Miklos already mentioned the three-way matching example, right? Is that automation? If so, then you can RPA every like those rule-based testing, right? Then there's no need for risk assessment. So that will lead to a very new paradigm of accounting and auditing industry. And what will that impact on the accounting education or auditing education? Because if those tasks are automated away, then why are you teaching students those like old-fashioned skills that won't be used in practice, right? So these are the things we can think about when it comes to RPA research. So that's about my presentation. So if you're interested, you can reach out to me like using this email, and I will post the slides on Canvas.